I never thought a breakup would leave me feeling so hollow. It wasn't like we were a perfect couple. Far from it, but when Jenna walked out the door for the last time, it felt like she took a part of me I didn't even know existed. 3 years we were together. College sweethearts. Co-renters of a tiny apartment filled with secondhand furniture and late-night takeout containers. We fought, we made up, we made plans. And just like that, it all unraveled in a single quiet conversation over lukewarm coffee. She said I wasn't the man she thought I was. That I seemed lost, distant, like I was somewhere else, even when I was holding her. Maybe she was right. That was a month ago. Since then, I'd been going through the motions, waking up, going to work, coming home, sleeping just enough to start it all over again. Food didn't taste right, music didn't sound right. Everything felt muted, like I was underwater. It was during one of those long, gray afternoons that my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb, my best friend since high school. Family barbecue this Saturday. Burgers, beer, bad music. You in? I stared at the message for a while. Socializing was the last thing I wanted. The thought of making small talk with relatives and smiling at strangers made me want to crawl back under my blanket. But maybe that was the problem. I hadn't done anything in weeks. Hadn't seen anyone. Caleb had always been the one to pull me out of my shell, even when we were kids. If he was reaching out now, maybe he saw something I didn't. Sure. What time? The reply came back instantly. 3 p.m. Backyard. Don't flake. I'll come drag you out myself. I smirked a little at that. Typical Caleb. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. I stood in front of my mirror, trying to decide whether I looked more like a depressed ex or a functioning adult. I settled for a navy tee and jeans, nothing fancy, just enough to pass as presentable. The drive to Caleb's place was uneventful, and the sun was already casting long golden streaks across the neighborhood when I pulled up. I could hear the low hum of music and the sizzle of a grill from the backyard. The scent of charcoal and barbecue sauce hit me before I even reached the gate. Hey, there he is. Caleb called out from across the yard, a drink in one hand, the other waving me over. I forced a smile and made my way toward him. Hope I'm not late. You're right on time, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. Come on, meet the crew. You remember most of my family, but I think a few uncles came in from out of town. As we moved through the yard, I greeted his parents, his cousins, and a few people I only vaguely remembered from holidays past. Everyone was friendly enough, the kind of suburban warmth that comes with plastic lawn chairs, beer coolers, and too much potato salad. Still, my smile felt tight. I nodded when I was supposed to, laughed when I felt a nudge in my ribs. But inside, I was still somewhere else. Still hearing Jenna's voice in my head. Still wondering what exactly about me hadn't been enough. I found a shady spot near the back fence and leaned against it, nursing a soda and watching Caleb chase his younger cousins around with a water gun. For a moment, I let myself relax. That's when I saw him. He stood near the grill, flipping burgers with practiced ease. Mid-40s maybe, but with a build that said he still hit the gym more often than most guys my age. Salt and pepper stubble along a strong jawline, aviator sunglasses perched on his head, and a worn leather bracelet around one wrist. He had the kind of quiet confidence that made people gravitate toward him without even realizing it. I nudged Caleb when he walked by. Who's that? He glanced toward the grill. Oh, that's Uncle Danny. Well, Daniel, technically. He's my mom's youngest brother. He and his wife split a while back, I think. He's cool though. You'll like him. I didn't respond right away. Something about Daniel drew my eye more than it should have. The way he moved. The way he smiled at the kids like he really saw them. There was warmth in him, something grounded. And then, as if he felt my gaze, Daniel looked up. Our eyes locked across the yard. Just for a second. He gave me a small nod. A slow, knowing kind of nod. Like he saw something in me that I hadn't figured out yet. I looked away quickly, heat rising to my face. I told myself it was just the sun. Or embarrassment. Or the awkwardness of being the freshly single guy at a family party where love seemed to hang in the air like smoke from the grill. But even as I turned back toward my drink, I couldn't stop the flicker in my chest. Something had shifted. The sun had hit its sweet spot, low enough to bathe everything in gold, high enough to keep the beer cold and the lawn still warm under bare feet. Kids darted between lawn chairs and picnic tables, arms sticky with melted popsicles, while someone's playlist cycled through old-school hits on a Bluetooth speaker hanging from the deck railing. It was the kind of afternoon that felt too cinematic to be real. I stood at the edge of the yard with my paper plate, chewing slowly through half a hot dog I didn't really want. My mind kept drifting, not back to Jenna, surprisingly, but toward the grill. Or more specifically, toward him. Daniel moved like someone used to heat, calm, deliberate, unfazed by the flames rising up now and then as the burgers sizzled. He wore a white Henley shirt rolled at the sleeves, a little too fitted not to notice, and dark jeans that clung to lean hips. His hands, big, weathered and oddly elegant, worked the spatula like a conductor guiding a slow symphony. I hadn't realized I was staring again until he looked up and caught me. He smiled. I blinked and looked down quickly at my plate, willing my face to stay neutral. It wasn't like I hadn't noticed attractive men before. I mean, I had in that passing, quiet sort of way. But this was something else. This felt active, present, magnetic. I hadn't expected that. "Enjoying the food?" a deep voice asked from over my shoulder. I turned and nearly dropped my plate. There he was, Daniel, standing right next to me, holding a beer in one hand and a perfectly charred burger on a napkin in the other. He had this easy smile, the kind that didn't try too hard. "Or are you just pretending to eat, so people leave you alone?" I let out a nervous chuckle. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who does the same thing," he said, holding out his hand. "I'm Daniel. You're Caleb's friend, right?" "Yeah."
I'm Aaron.
His handshake was firm, steady, but not overbearing. There was something reassuring in it, like shaking hands with someone who's seen more than they'll ever say out loud. "Nice to meet you, Aaron," he said, eyes locked on mine for a moment longer than casual. "Likewise," I said, trying not to sound too breathless. "Caleb mentioned you were the grill master." Daniel gave a small shrug. "I wouldn't say master. I just know how not to burn the meat. Most days." He leaned against the edge of the picnic table beside me, taking a slow sip of his beer. "You doing okay? You seem a little quiet." I paused. "Just been one of those months." "Breakup?" he asked, matter of fact but not unkind. I blinked at him. "How'd you?" "I've got a decent radar for that kind of thing," he said, glancing out at the yard. "You've got the look. Not sad exactly. Just like you're trying to remember how to breathe." His words hit with strange precision, like he'd reached inside and poked the one bruise I'd been hiding from everyone else. "Yeah," I admitted softly. "Pretty recent." He nodded but didn't push. Just took another sip of his beer, giving the silence between us enough space to feel comfortable. I liked that about him instantly, the lack of forced cheer or surface-level advice. Just presence. "Caleb says you live out of town?" I asked, needing something to say. "Used to. I moved back recently. Needed some space of my own for a while." I caught the slight emphasis he put on space. "You came alone today?" I asked before I could stop myself. Daniel looked at me, that small smile returning. "Yeah. My situation's a bit complicated." "Got it. Sorry, I didn't mean to pry." "It's fine," he said. "Actually nice to talk to someone who doesn't know the whole history. Feels a little lighter, you know?" I nodded. I did know. Too well. From the other side of the yard, Caleb called out, waving me over to meet his aunt who'd just arrived. I glanced back at Daniel. "I should probably go be social," I said with a half smile. He tipped his beer toward me. "Go on, hero. But circle back later. I'd like to hear more about how you're surviving heartbreak." Something in his tone, warm, teasing, but laced with sincerity, made my pulse skip. I walked away feeling slightly dazed, like I'd stepped out of the sun and into something I hadn't been prepared for. Was it admiration? Curiosity? Flirting? No. I shook the thought. He was older, married, Caleb's uncle. This wasn't that kind of story. Still, My skin tingled from where his eyes had rested a little too long. My throat was dry in a way no soda could fix. I told myself it was nerves, admiration, the aftermath of a breakup rewiring my brain. That's all it was. But deep down I knew I was lying. I tried to lose myself in the party after that. Caleb's aunt handed me a plate of grilled corn. His cousin asked for help setting up the folding chairs. And someone shoved a red Solo cup in my hand while shouting the lyrics to an old Bon Jovi song. The backyard buzzed with that warm, summer energy. Kids laughing as they splashed in the inflatable pool. Adults half-drunk on beer and sunshine. But my eyes kept drifting back to the grill. Back to him. Daniel had slipped into the crowd. But not from my mind. Every few minutes he'd reappear. Passing by with a tray of burgers or refilling someone's drink. And without fail, he'd look at me. Not a casual glance. Not the kind of look you give a friend of the family. These were deliberate, unhurried. A gaze that lingered half a second too long. Like he was memorizing the slope of my shoulders or the twitch of my lip when I smiled politely at a joke I didn't find funny. And every time he looked at me, I felt like my skin was buzzing. The first time our hands brushed, it was accidental. I reached for a bottle of water on the patio table just as he set down a plate. His knuckles grazed mine, rough and warm. I jerked my hand back, muttering a quick, sorry. But he just smiled. No need to be, he said, eyes holding mine. The second time, it was a little less accidental. He passed me a napkin as I stood near the grill, wiping barbecue sauce from my hand, and let his fingers rest against mine for a beat longer than necessary. You missed a spot, he said softly. I laughed it off, even though my heart was pounding. I kept telling myself it was nothing. I'd just gone through a breakup. I was emotionally scrambled, starved for attention, reading too much into every interaction. That's what I told myself, over and over. But then came the fire pit. As the sky shifted from golden to dusky lavender, someone lit the fire pit near the far end of the yard. Most of the guests drifted toward it, kids toasting marshmallows, couples curled up in camp chairs. I found an open spot on a stone bench a little farther from the crowd, drawn by the warmth of the flames and the chance to breathe. And then, like smoke on a breeze, Daniel was beside me.
No hanno un cement.
No small talk. He just sat down, close enough for his knee to brush mine under the pretense of limited space, and offered me a fresh drink. Soda, he said. Figured you might want something less spiked. Thanks, I said, taking the cup. You always this attentive? He smiled. Only when I feel like someone needs it. I looked at him, really looked, the flicker of firelight catching the gray in his stubble, the quiet way he watched me, like he was studying a map he already knew but wanted to be sure of. You said earlier you've got a decent radar for heartbreak, I said. That from experience? He exhaled, the kind of breath that carried weight. More than I care to admit, he said. Love doesn't always line up the way we think it should. Sometimes we chase it because we're told we're supposed to. And sometimes, he paused, turning his cup slowly in his hand. Sometimes it sneaks up on you when you're not looking, when it's not supposed to happen at all. I felt my stomach twist. I stared at the fire for a while, the wood crackling, embers lifting like tiny stars. She said I wasn't who she thought I was, I murmured. Said I seemed distant, like I didn't know what I wanted. Daniel didn't interrupt. She was probably right, I continued. I tried to love her the right way, the expected way, and I did love her, I think. But there was always something missing, something I couldn't name. I looked over at him, and I don't know what that says about me. His gaze met mine, soft and steady. It says you're still learning how to be honest with yourself, he said. And that's not a weakness. There was something in his voice, low, calm, without judgment, that made my chest tighten. You ever feel that way? I asked. Like maybe you've been pretending for so long, you don't even know what's real anymore? He smiled, but it was a sad smile. More times than I care to admit. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. His presence alone felt like a confession. Like every quiet, measured moment between us had been building to this, not a declaration, but an understanding. The night air cooled, but I didn't feel it. Not really. Not with him beside me, his shoulder brushing mine, the scent of cedar smoke and aftershave making my head feel light. My heart raced, torn between instinct and impulse. Between the familiar path I'd always walked and the door that was suddenly cracked open before me. He was a man. He was older. He was married. And yet, for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt seen. Not as someone's boyfriend. Not as a guest. Not even as Caleb's friend. Just as me. And in that moment, sitting beside Daniel beneath a sky of glowing embers and distant stars, I wondered if maybe what I'd been missing wasn't something I could find in a woman, or in a version of myself shaped by everyone else's expectations. Maybe it had been this all along. I didn't move, neither did he, but something had shifted between us, and I wasn't sure I wanted to shift it back. The fire pit crackled beside us, its glow soft and rhythmic like a second heartbeat. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, side by side, as the party around us dimmed into background noise. Laughter distant, footsteps softened by grass, someone's Bluetooth speaker murmuring an old soul song we both seemed to recognize but didn't name. Daniel's presence felt both calming and dangerous, like leaning too close to a candle, warming your hands while knowing you could get burned if you weren't careful. Then he finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "I've been married for 18 years, he said, not looking at me. To a woman who's good, kind, decent. We were young. We were expected. And I thought if I gave it enough time, maybe I'd grow into it." I stayed silent, listening. "We had a routine," he continued. "Holidays, dinner parties. We smiled for photos and held hands in public. But inside I felt like a ghost in my own home." His fingers toyed with the label on his drink. I kept convincing myself I was just tired, stressed, distracted, that everyone feels this way sometimes. But the truth is, I was lying. To her, to myself, to everyone. The air between us thickened. I turned to look at him, but he was still staring into the fire like it held answers he hadn't found yet. "I think I always knew," he said, quieter now. "Even before we married. I had these feelings, moments, thoughts I buried so deep I forgot where I put them. I told myself it was just confusion, that it would pass." He looked at me then, and I felt it, that raw, quiet intensity in his eyes. But it didn't. I swallowed hard. There was something about hearing it from him. A man so grounded, so composed, that made the ground shift beneath me. His honesty cracked something open inside me, something I hadn't dared to name. He leaned in just slightly, his voice softer now. "You look like someone who hasn't been truly seen in a long time." The words hit like a gust of wind through a window I didn't know was open. I felt my chest tighten, my throat dry. "Why would you say that?" "Because I recognize it," he said. "It's the way you look at people without really letting them look back. The way you smile like you're performing it. Like you're trying to fit into something that doesn't quite hold you." I stared at the fire, heart thudding. "I'm not. I don't even know what I am," I said, my voice shaky. I just got out of something that didn't feel right anymore. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I'm confused or if I'm—" "You're not broken," he said firmly. "And you don't need to explain yourself to me. I'm not asking you to label anything. I just wanted you to hear it, that you deserve to feel seen, wanted, for exactly who you are." The warmth in his voice was unbearable. Kind, devastating. I stood suddenly, the need to move overwhelming. I should probably head out. It's getting late. Daniel stood too, his movement fluid but cautious, like he didn't want to scare me. "Hey," he said gently, reaching out and placing his hand on my wrist. I froze. His fingers didn't grip. They just rested there, warm, steady, grounding. And yet, in that small contact I felt everything. The pull, the fear, the magnetic tension between two people on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful. We didn't kiss. We didn't speak. We just stood there in the half-light, the world soft around us, his hand on mine like a tether. I looked up at him, and for a moment, I saw it in his face. Not lust, not even desire. Just hope. Fragile, flickering hope. I need to go, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Okay. I pulled back gently. His hand let go. I walked away through the backyard, my footsteps feeling too loud in the quiet. I passed Caleb without a word, gave him a wave that I wasn't sure he even saw. The night air outside the yard was cooler, quieter. I got into my car and sat with the door open, just breathing. What the hell had that been? I'd come to a barbecue to escape the fog of heartbreak, and instead, I'd walked into something else entirely. A man who saw me, who really saw me, who peeled back the layers I'd hidden under for years and said things I wasn't ready to hear but couldn't ignore. He was married. He was my best friend's uncle. He was a man, and I had felt something, not just attraction but recognition, like I was seeing myself reflected in someone else for the first time. I rested my head against the steering wheel and let out a long, uneven breath. I hadn't kissed him, but it felt like we had said more than any kiss could. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the firelight flickering across Daniel's face. The way he looked at me when he said, "You deserve to feel seen." His voice lingered in my head like a song I couldn't stop humming. I told myself to forget it, to file it away as a strange, emotionally charged moment, the kind that happens when two people are vulnerable and the air is thick with something unspoken. But I didn't forget, not even for a second. The next morning, I woke up groggy and unrest. I showered, ate half a banana, and stared at my phone far too long, waiting for a message I wasn't sure would come. It did, just after noon. Daniel, hey, I hope I didn't make things uncomfortable last night. That wasn't my intention. I'd really like to see you again. No pressure. Just coffee? My stomach flipped. I read it twice, 3 times. He'd left the door wide open. Kind, careful, giving me room to say no, but also honest, like he meant every word. I put the phone down, picked it back up, started typing, deleted everything, started again. Was I really considering this? My thoughts spiraled about what it meant, what Caleb would say, what I was even looking for right now. Was it just confusion? Rebound energy? Some mid-20s identity crisis triggered by heartbreak? But when I pictured Daniel's face, the calm in his eyes, the quiet strength in his voice, I didn't feel confused. I felt safe and seen. I finally replied, "Coffee sounds good." We met that afternoon at a small, tucked-away cafe a few blocks from downtown. Neutral territory.
No expectations.
I arrived early, trying to calm the knots in my chest. Daniel showed up right on time. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, no sunglasses this time. No firelight to hide behind. Just him, fully present. And the second I saw him, all that tension inside me softened. "Hey," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hey," I said back, trying to keep my voice steady. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he admitted. "Neither was I," I said, then smiled faintly. "But here I am." We ordered coffee, mine black, his with cream and sugar, and sat in silence for a few moments, letting the air settle between us. "I meant what I said," he began. "I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I said quickly. "I mean, I was confused. Still am, honestly. But I wasn't uncomfortable." Daniel nodded, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. "I've spent most of my life trying to be someone else," he said. "The version that made people proud. The husband, the provider, the safe, acceptable choice. But it always felt like I was watching myself from the outside." He looked at me, his eyes clear and serious. "I don't want to live that way anymore." I swallowed hard. "That's a big thing to say." "I know," he said softly. "And I'm not asking you to carry it. I just need you to know that whatever happened between us last night, whatever that moment was, it woke something up in me." I looked down at my cup, fingers tracing the rim. "Part of me still thinks this is crazy," I admitted. "You're Caleb's uncle. You're a man," he finished gently. I nodded. He leaned forward slightly, voice lower now. "Do you feel something when you're around me?" I hesitated, not because I didn't know the answer, but because saying it aloud would make it real. Yeah, I said finally.
Ido.
And it scares the hell out of me. Daniel smiled, but it wasn't smug. It was tender. Me too. We sat like that for a long while, sipping coffee, letting the silence stretch and bend and settle around us. I don't know where this goes, I said quietly. I'm still figuring things out. About myself. About what I want. He nodded. That's okay. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for time. To get to know you. To sit across from you like this and feel like I'm not lying anymore. I looked at him, really looked. The lines near his eyes, the warmth in his smile, the way he seemed both older and freer than anyone I'd ever known. I want to feel alive again, he said, voice barely above a whisper. And I think I do. When I'm with you. I didn't know how to respond. So I didn't. I just held his gaze. There was no kiss.
No dramatic gesture.
Just the quiet thrum of possibility building between us. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I felt chosen. It happened on a Thursday night. I was home, curled up on the couch with a takeout container and a half-watched movie playing in the background, when Daniel texted me. I'm at my place tonight. Just me. Would you want to come over? No pressure. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. I knew what he meant, or at least what it might lead to, and part of me wanted to run from it, to stay in the safe, gray space of not knowing. But another part, the part that had been stirring ever since that night by the fire, ached to say yes. I didn't overthink it this time. I'll be there in 30. Daniel's apartment was on the second floor of an older brick building just outside the city. Quiet, unassuming, with ivy creeping up the walls and a crooked porch light that flickered faintly when I buzzed in. He answered the door barefoot, wearing a faded t-shirt and gray joggers, his hair slightly tousled like he'd been running his fingers through it all evening. Hey, he said softly, stepping aside. Hey, I walked in slowly, taking it all in. The space was warm, a little lived in but cozy. Books on the shelves, a guitar resting in the corner, soft jazz humming from a speaker in the background. There were no family portraits, no wedding photos, just him. I'm glad you came, he said, closing the door behind me. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted. I wasn't sure you'd want to, he replied. He offered me a drink, just water this time, and we sat on the couch, a safe distance apart at first, talking about everything and nothing. Music, childhood, first crushes, favorite movies, regrets. I used to imagine a different life for myself, Daniel said, swirling the water in his glass. A quieter one, not better, just more honest. I looked at him, really looked. His jaw was clenched ever so slightly, and his fingers tapped against his thigh like he was keeping time with a memory. Why didn't you choose it? I asked. He smiled faintly. Fear, obligation, the need to make people proud. You grow up in a certain kind of world, and the roles are already assigned. You just step into them. I know that feeling, I said, quieter than I meant to. Like you're following a script someone else wrote. He nodded. Exactly. We kept talking. For hours. About the night at the barbecue. About the way it felt to be seen, to be vulnerable. About how terrifying it was to open up and not know what you might find on the other side. And then came the silence. Not awkward. Not forced. Just the kind of silence that waits patiently, knowing what's about to happen. Daniel set down his glass and turned toward me, eyes searching. You don't have to stay, he said. You can leave whenever you want. I didn't move. Instead, I looked at him. His guarded hope, the ache in his voice, the gentle way his hand brushed mine. And then he leaned in, slow, hesitant, almost reverent. I didn't pull back. Our lips met softly at first, a question, not an answer. But I answered with the way I leaned into him, the way my fingers found the back of his neck, the way every part of me seemed to whisper yes before I even understood what I was saying. The kiss deepened, but it wasn't about hunger. It was about release, about everything we'd held in for too long. His mouth was warm, his breath uneven, his hands trembling just slightly as they touched my face like he was afraid I'd disappear. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "I've wanted that for a long time," he whispered. I nodded, breathless. "Me too." The rest unfolded quietly. We moved together like waves meeting for the first time. Slow, uncertain, but inevitable. His bedroom was dimly lit, soft linen sheets and open windows letting in the hum of the city. We undressed without hurry, every button and sleeve a small act of trust. It wasn't just physical. It wasn't rushed or wild or chaotic. It was intimate, vulnerable. I saw him, not Uncle Daniel, not the married man, not the person hiding behind years of practiced restraint, but him, honest, open, wanting. And he saw me, not as someone rebounding or experimenting or playing pretend, but as someone waking up to a truth he'd been too afraid to admit until now. Afterward, we lay tangled together beneath the thin sheets, the window breeze lifting the curtains gently, as if even the world outside didn't want to disturb us. Daniel traced lazy circles on my shoulder, his other hand tucked beneath his head. "I don't know what this is yet," I murmured, half asleep. "I don't either," he said. "But I know it's real." I turned toward him, resting my head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I felt held, seen, wanted. In the days that followed, everything felt different. Not in a loud, fireworks and confetti kind of way, but like someone had quietly opened a window I hadn't realized was shut, and now I could finally breathe. It wasn't just about the night Daniel and I shared. It wasn't just about the kiss, or the way his arms felt around me when I fell asleep beside him. It was about the way he looked at me afterward, like I wasn't just something he wanted, but someone he saw. For the first time in my life, I felt known. And somehow that made me want to know myself better, too. I found myself paying attention to little things, how I walked, how I spoke, how I looked at other men when I passed them on the street. There was no fear in it anymore, just quiet curiosity. A desire to stop performing and start living. One morning, I found myself scrolling back through old photos of me and Jenna. Beach trips, birthdays, dimly lit restaurants. We looked happy in most of them, and maybe we were, in a way. But there was always something hollow behind my smile, something rehearsed. And now that I had something else to compare it to, something real, I couldn't pretend I hadn't noticed it all along. I kept my distance from Caleb for a few days. Not because I didn't want to see him, but because I didn't trust myself not to spill something I wasn't ready to explain. But eventually, I knew I had to check in. We met up at our usual burger spot. A greasy little dive with duct tape on the booths and milkshakes so thick you could stand a spoon in them. The place where we used to sit for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He didn't know anything. Not really. But best friends have a way of knowing things you haven't said yet. "So," he said between bites, "you seem lighter. I don't know. Less mopey." I smirked. "That's one way to say it." He looked at me more closely. "You meet someone?" I hesitated just a second too long. He raised an eyebrow. "Oh damn. You did." I shook my head. "It's not like that. It's complicated." Caleb grinned. "All the best stories are." I stirred my straw in my drink, watching the ice melt. "Let's just say, I'm figuring some things out. About myself. About what I want." He nodded slowly, his grin softening into something more serious. "I don't need details," he said. "But whatever it is, you seem more like yourself than I've seen in a while." That caught me off guard. "Really?" "Yeah," he said. "Like you've stopped pretending." I stared at him for a beat, then let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Thanks, man." He bumped my shoulder with his. "Just don't get all weird on me. I still expect you to lose at Mario Kart next weekend." We both laughed. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed with someone instead of just near them. Meanwhile, Daniel was going through something far more difficult. He didn't tell me right away, but a week later we met again, this time for a walk by the river. The late afternoon sun sparkled on the water, and the smell of honeysuckle lingered in the air. "I told her," he said simply, hands tucked into his jacket pockets. I stopped walking. "You did." He nodded, eyes ahead. Sat her down. Told her I've been lying. That I've been confused for years. And I can't do it anymore. I waited. She cried, he said. Of course she did. But not for the reasons I expected. She told me she'd known for a long time. Maybe not the details, but the truth of it. She said she felt it in the way I never fully reached for her. I didn't know what to say. I just took a step closer. I didn't blame her, he added. And she didn't blame me. We both apologized. And then we let go. He looked over at me then. Tired, but somehow lighter. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But I feel like I'm breathing again. We kept walking in silence, his shoulder brushing mine now and then. The sky turned a pale lavender as the sun dipped lower, and for a while, the world felt beautifully still. Neither of us said what this was, what we were, because it didn't need defining yet. It was early, fragile, unwritten, but it was real. Over the next few weeks, we both changed in quiet, powerful ways. Daniel started painting again, something he hadn't done since his 20s. He sent me photos of his messy canvases, swirls of color and emotion he couldn't put into words yet. He started going on morning runs, smiled more, slept better. I started writing again, not just emails or to-do lists, but real writing. Stories, thoughts, things I hadn't let myself explore in years. I stopped editing myself in conversation. I started asking questions I was too afraid to before, about identity, about freedom, about the kind of love that didn't just fit, but filled. One night, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man looking back at me. Not because I'd changed completely, but because, for the first time, I could see who I actually was underneath it all. And I liked him. The smell hit me before we even reached the backyard, charcoal smoke, sweet corn on the grill, and the unmistakable tang of Caleb's mom's famous potato salad. It was all exactly how I remembered it, and completely different at the same time. Because this time, I wasn't coming alone. Daniel walked beside me, one hand loosely around mine, the other carrying a bottle of wine we picked up on the way. He looked calm, maybe even confident, but I could tell from the way his thumb kept rubbing against my knuckles that his nerves were humming beneath the surface, just like mine. We reached the gate and I paused. Still time to run, I joked half-heartedly. He looked at me, smiling. Not a chance. And with that, we stepped inside together. It was strange how easily life seemed to continue without noticing how much had changed. Kids still shrieked as they chased each other around the yard. The same old Bluetooth speaker played the same barbecue classics. Someone was flipping burgers with too much flair, and plastic chairs were still sinking slightly into the grass. But as soon as we were through the gate, people started noticing. Caleb's mom blinked, then smiled. His cousin Heather tilted her head with a curious, almost amused look, and Caleb, standing by the cooler with a beer in hand, froze like someone had just hit pause on him mid-sentence. Daniel and I walked up together, our joined hands still between us, quiet but unapologetic. Hey, I said, offering Caleb a smile that held everything and nothing at once. His eyes darted between us. Well, damn, he muttered, then let out a breathy laugh. That explains a lot. You okay? I asked, voice gentle. He stared at Daniel for a long second, not with anger but calculation. Then he looked back at me. And finally, he broke into the same crooked grin I'd known since we were 15. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this is weird as hell. But he looked down at our hands, then up at our faces. You look happier than I've ever seen you. I felt my throat tighten. Thanks, man, I said. Daniel held out a hand. Still want that wine? Or should I keep it for us? Caleb laughed. Hand it over, old man. You're not getting out of dish duty just because you're dating my best friend. We all laughed, and just like that, the air shifted. People relaxed. The tension deflated. Someone handed Daniel a beer, and Heather pulled me aside for a rapid-fire round of whispered questions. We didn't offer details. We didn't need to. We just existed. Together. Throughout the afternoon, I watched Daniel move through the crowd. Not hiding. Not shrinking. Just being him. He laughed with Caleb's uncles, helped a toddler refill her juice cup, and even joined a round of lawn darts with surprising accuracy. And every so often, he'd glance across the yard at me. That same look, steady, warm, familiar. The one he gave me a year ago when I was standing alone by the grill, nursing a soda and a heart full of confusion. Back then, I didn't know who I was. I was trying so hard to play the part. The good guy, the straight boyfriend, the person who had it all figured out. But Daniel saw through it. Saw me. Before I could. And now, here we were. No longer hiding in corners or behind polite conversations. No more coded glances or restrained touches. Now, when he looked at me, I didn't look away. Near the end of the evening, as the sky deepened into a soft pink haze and the music faded into chatter, I found Daniel sitting by the fire pit again. The same spot where it all began. Only this time, he wasn't staring into the flames like a man haunted by his choices. He was smiling, relaxed, free. I sat beside him and leaned against his shoulder. His hand found mine without searching. "It's strange being back here," I murmured. "Yeah." A year ago, I walked into this yard heartbroken and completely lost. I didn't know what I was looking for. He looked at me with that same quiet knowing. And now, I smiled. Now I know what I found. We sat like that for a while, listening to the gentle crackle of the fire and the hum of distant voices. The air was cooler now, and someone had lit citronella candles along the porch railing, their glow flickering like fireflies. Eventually, we stood, said our goodbyes. Caleb pulled me into a tight hug and whispered, "I'm proud of you, man. Both of you." Daniel shook his hand, and they exchanged a look that said more than words could. As we walked toward the gate, fingers still laced together, I felt a wave of something rise up in me. Not nerves, not doubt, peace. I glanced over at Daniel, who was already looking at me. That same look, the one that started it all. And in that moment, I thought, I came here after a breakup, unsure of who I was. But he looked at me like he'd been waiting forever. And now I know why. Did you feel the chemistry between them from the beginning? Or were you just as surprised as our narrator? Have you ever experienced a moment where someone saw you, the real you, for the first time? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe love can find us when we least expect it, even at a backyard barbecue? And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another love story that challenges expectations.